This is now a quick test of my new podcast setup using the Galaxy S25 and the DJI Mic Go. The idea is that I have this set up on a table, so I can just take a very small tripod with me, which I can actually show you, which just came in the mail. So this cost €2 and I think 50 cents. It also came with a remote, and this remote allows me to start and stop the recording. I cannot pause the recording, unfortunately, but I think a podcast should be kind of a conversation anyway. So I won't record it in the usual style with which I record my normal YouTube videos, which is take after take, such that I have basically linear video editing right within the recording. So baked into the recording basically. So I don't need to edit my videos, which is quite a little bit of an advantage, even if I mumble or mispronounce. But of course the disadvantage is that I cannot redo a take. So I'm now using the DJI Mic Go, which I also recently got. These cost €109 from Amazon, and the tripod I already mentioned cost €2 and 50 cents. I have the receiver connected to my Galaxy S25, and hopefully it now picks up the audio from this here. And now in a kind of professional setup, I now would basically use this clamp here. So this microphone comes with a clamp, but it also has a magnet, which can be used to attach it to a shirt. So let's say I'm wearing this jacket, then I put this on the inside, and then I can attach this like this, and then I could basically have the conversation. So now the question is, how do I basically set up the scene such that it looks kind of professional, and I also obviously only have one camera. In theory, I actually would have two cameras, because I also have an older Galaxy S10, which then maybe in terms of the look is not exactly the same. But what I want to avoid, I think, is that my video production is slowed down by kind of this podcast setup. The main metric I use is video count, and so if I increase the amount of videos I make, so first of all, of course, the absolute amount of videos I make, but also the rate of how many videos I produce, then eventually traffic, I guess, will follow if the things I put out are not totally useless. So that's the main idea. So of course, podcast kind of actually slows me down, but I also want to make podcasts. So of course, if I pick the next video I want to make, it's always kind of a trade-off in between quality and quantity, in between what I want and maybe what would maximize video count the fastest. So now this would be the setup. In this studio here, I don't have the lighting set up properly. I do have an additional lighting setup, but this is currently not on, so I'm only using the overhead light. And if I now use the overhead light, then if I go basically out of the lighting, then my face is not lit that much. But I want to kind of simulate what it could look like in basically this scenario. So I do have kind of a standing desk here, and there would be two positions, the one on the right, which would be the one I have. I also have two screens, so we could actually also look up a few things if we need to look up a few things, or we can take a look at graphs, but I probably would not embed these graphs, as this should be a very simple setup for me. I don't want to have the hassle of basically then post-production, or of spending 3 to 5 hours or 10 hours or 15 hours or 20 hours in post-production. I tried this already with a podcast I did with a friend a couple of years ago, and most of the time I invested into the podcast then was basically post-production, but also distribution. So I already have a couple of channels. So basically I have different interests, and these different interests I have each one channel for, and on these channels I have sub-channels. One of these sub-channels, for example, is the front channel, where I probably will post this. This is on the video creation channel. And then I also have a show, which I already created on some of these channels. And on the show, I now will have probably landscape videos. So usually my videos are mostly in portrait, but in these landscape videos now, what I can potentially do is interview guests, and not in these landscape videos, in the show, where I also then have the landscape mode, because it probably will be more useful if I have landscape if there are two people in the frame. So let's first of all adjust the frame a little bit still, because I want to make sure that both people are kind of course now the height difference might also come into play. And so this would actually, I think, be a somewhat reasonable setup. Of course now the faces are not that big if I have it if I only have one camera. That's kind of a problem in terms of engagement probably, but compared to, well, having a two camera setup and then trying to cut it, and I currently have the approach, as I mentioned, that I don't cut my videos. So this would be basically the podcast I can make. I now have the microphones. I now have the Galaxy S25, which I would not have necessarily needed, but I needed the Galaxy S25 for other reasons as well, because the Galaxy S10 did have trouble even recording normal YouTube videos with multiple takes within the YouTube Android app. So this would be the setup. It doesn't look particularly good, I would say. I could actually move beneath this other light, which is back here, and then maybe it actually would a little bit light my face. And of course, the idea about a portable microphone is also that, at least in theory, I can also now talk into the camera without me standing directly in front of the camera. So the distance to the camera is no longer basically a criteria for how good the audio is. So if I now go back here, then again, there would be lighting. So one could also imagine a podcast like this. Of course, now the faces, which are the most engaging part of the human body, probably. The faces of the guest and me would not be that visible. But nonetheless, the big advantage of using this setup would be that the phone I already have with me. The only thing I additionally now have to carry is this pouch, which then has this case with the microphones and also the tripod I already showed you. So after I recorded the first part of this video, I realized that the audio was from the internal microphone of the Galaxy S25, at least after basically listening back to the video file. So now it should be from the DJI Mic Go. It at least shows that it is connected. So that's now the quick comparison of the audio. I now obviously also can move away and the audio still stays the same. So I also now again insert it into my tripod and let's take a look. So this would be then the setup I use. So probably this distance and then the guest would be on the other side, maybe also somewhere else, not necessarily here in the studio.